A new plan has just been released by Canada that they think can play a major role in tackling Canada's housing crisis. But this policy isn't as new as you might think, with ties to the housing policy from the time of the end of the Second World War, a policy that allowed for hundreds of thousands of new homes to be constructed more quickly than ever. But how exactly will this work? What does it mean for you? And what risks are involved? Let's get right into it. Just this morning, Canada's Housing Minister, Sean Fraser, who I personally think will likely be the future replacement for Trudeau as the Liberal leader, well, he announced a strategy that will soon be implemented in Canada, and he thinks it's going to make a huge difference, borrowing from the strategy, as I mentioned, that was employed when tons of Canadians were coming back from the war and desperately needed housing for their young families.
We intend to take these lessons from our history books and bring them into the 21st century. We are going to be moving forward with a catalog of pre-approved designs at the federal level. We are going to be launching consultations on the contents of that catalog in January of 2024. It provides an extraordinary opportunity to use the solutions of the past to identify and overcome, challenges that we face today.
But what exactly is he talking about? Well, starting in the 1940s all the way up until the 80s, there was a set of different catalogs of pre-approved housing designs that allowed you to more quickly go through the approval process so that these homes could be built more quickly and not sort of kept up by all of the approval processes that modern homes need to go through. And here are a couple different samples throughout the decades that these catalogs existed in. You might recognize some of these designs from the houses and homes and communities in your area that were built throughout these years. And it seems like the red tape and the lengthy approval process is a problem that both political parties in Canada can get behind. This was one of the key points that was released in the largely viewed Housing Hell video that the Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre put out just about a week ago.
The strongest signs that our approval process is not working: of 35 OECD countries, only the Slovak Republic takes longer than Canada to approve a building project. The UK and the US approve projects 3 times faster without sacrificing quality or safety.
Now, one concern is that this doesn't focus enough on density, and that building a lot of single-family homes like this won't actually house as many people as we need to house. At least that's one criticism I've heard. But the Housing Minister, Sean Fraser, seems to have considered this.
The next version of a catalog of pre-approved designs won't focus on the same kinds of homes that were included in the post-war era. We're going to be looking for a series of different kinds of homes and different designs within each category. We'll be looking for pre-approved designs for multiplexes, for mid-rise buildings, for student housing, for seniors' residences, and other small to medium-scale residential properties. This will include garden suites and laneway homes and different kinds of houses that will solve the challenges that our communities are facing today. It's important that we have multiple designs in each of these categories so communities have some agency in determining what their communities look like. And of course, builders will continue to be free to build homes that have that are not necessarily included inside any pre-approved design.
So it seems that multiple different building types will be included, and one key point that he makes at the end there is that this won't be a mandatory book of designs that builders must adhere to across the country. Instead, it will be entirely optional, and builders can opt into it to sort of expedite the process of the approvals that they need to obtain before actually starting to build these larger developments. And it seems that introducing this option of fast-tracking approval on preset designs does come with a lot of different benefits. This is a thread from Dr. Mike Moffat. He's a housing expert that I've personally like to follow, and one interesting thing is that the Liberals brought him in the summer in their sort of caucus retreat that they did on the East Coast, and they had him and a number of other housing experts come in and say, here's what we think you should do. Some of these items that they've been pushing for years and actually have put together in the National Housing Accord, which is a group of experts putting together a bunch of different policy possibilities that could actually help with this issue. He says that it's not just housing construction that will benefit from these predefined home designs, but actually the financing, the developers getting the money, getting the loans for it, will be streamlined, as well as obtaining insurance on these properties. He makes the comparison okay, if you've got an exotic car that an insurer has never had before, then it's probably going to be more more expensive and a more lengthy process to obtain insurance on it. The same goes for housing, right? Largely these days, all of the building has been bespoke or has been unique one by one, and you have to go through a lengthy approval process. But if we can streamline that, both for insurance, financing, and the actual construction of the houses, well, there's lots of cost savings that can be found there. He also talks about productivity gains. This is something we've talked about on the channel quite a lot, saying, okay, even though Canada's GDP is going up, and that might look good, look like we have a strong economy, our GDP per capita, or our measure of productivity, well, that's actually going down. And this seems like it could be a way to address that, at least in part, making builders more productive, meaning, okay, we can, if we're building the same home over and over again, or from a catalog of homes, well, then maybe people get better and better at building those homes more efficiently. Producers, the suppliers of the materials that go into building these houses, well, if you know there's going to be demand for these set materials, for these set designs of houses, you can produce those materials en masse far easier because you're not taking as much of a risk in producing these materials, right? You know that if you create these materials that are needed for the homes, that they're going to be used.
We can take that idea and bring it into the 21st century. We plan to do that by adopting a catalog of pre-approved designs that will give timely access to home builders who are moving forward with projects that can be done quickly and in a cost-effective way. The homes that we build in the future might not look quite like the victory homes of the past century. They'll involve new technologies, including modular housing, panelization, mass timber, and even 3D printing. But if we're willing to learn from the lessons of the past, we can identify solutions that will solve the housing challenges that Canada's facing today.
So you might like some of the ways those houses look, and you might absolutely hate it. The nice thing is you're not forced to buy it. This is just something that will allow for more supply to hit the market, ideally if it's implemented in the right way, hopefully allowing for a home that you do like the look of to at least remain a little more stagnant in value over the coming years if we are actually able to create a larger glut of supply through a program like this. But of course, these designs aren't set in stone. In fact, we'll have to wait a while before we can potentially see any of the benefits of this strategy.
So in terms of timeline, I've mentioned we're going to launch a consultation in January. We anticipate that we will have blueprints that you can look at in calendar year 2024. My hope is that we'll be able to have them start to roll out in the fall. Keep in mind, there's the possibility as new technologies emerge to add designs in the sense that we can create a living program, so to speak. For example, although we have significant technology in place when it comes to modular home construction panelization, 3D printing has an opportunity to expand the scale of their operations in Canada, and to the extent we in the future determine there's designs we could add for new technologies that emerge, that could happen subsequent to a fall 2024 timeline.
So very interesting stuff, right? And I've got to give them credit where it's due. I applaud the Liberals here. I think that this is a good idea. Although, as I always say, the devil is in the details. We don't know if this will work out. It'll largely come down to the legislation that's drafted and potentially passed that will allow for this, and also how municipalities react to it as well, right? Because ultimately the jurisdiction of housing is in the provincial governments and the municipal governments, the provinces and the cities. So we might see Not in My Backyard or NIMBY municipalities fight against these plans, maybe saying that we don't want this homogenized look where there's so many similar homes. But I think that having more homes, even if they look more similar than the homes do today in some of the newer developed neighborhoods, it's probably a better thing to just at least have the housing rather than not have it. Do you get what I'm saying? And one other thing I'm really going to look out for is how the Conservative Party reacts to all of this. They've been hammering home the red tape bureaucracy message as the issue for housing in Canada, largely blaming the Liberals for this. And I think that this plan, at least in part, talks to this, right? It addresses it to some extent. But I also don't see a world where Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives applauds the Liberals for this decision, even though it kind of is in line with the type of thing that he's been saying he would do if he was in power. I also think that if the Liberals want to have a chance in hell of winning the next election, they likely need to move off of Trudeau as leader and probably do that rather soon. I think, at least maybe this is how I feel, but I think Canadians want leaders who don't talk to them like they're stupid, right? In a performative, let's all work together and be happy kind of way. I think Trudeau talks like that. I also think Freeland talks in a very similar way. But Fraser, as I've said before, does seem like a breath of fresh air, at least when it comes to the way that he speaks to Canadians, even if he is potentially handcuffed right now by the government's policy decisions of the past, likely unable to pivot. Otherwise, he could make his current boss, the Prime Minister, and the current government look bad, sort of pivoting away from some of the housing decisions of the past few years. So it's definitely going to be interesting to watch all of this pan out, and I'm curious what you think about it. I could be wrong on all of this. This is something that seems exciting to me, but maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I've got this completely wrong. Either way, let me know down in the comments what you think about it. What have I got right? What have I got wrong? All that good stuff. I'm trying to figure it out just as much as you are, so I appreciate your feedback. And with all of that said, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I hope this video has helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.